Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Kelly Garrett on the podcast. She's an ACE certified personal trainer, as well as a mom of two and a pro figure competitor. So she's done a lot in the fitness industry, and we'll talk to her a little bit more about that. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Kelly, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, this is a question that I ask to start off every podcast, no matter how many times people say, "Oh, you asked this way too much and it's boring and dull." What is the weather like today?
Oh, it's gorgeous for now. We're getting some afternoon showers, but for the most part, most of the day it's perfect summer weather. So
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like that up here in Minnesota, but hey, when you got this pale Norwegian white skin, I basically have to wait until it gets, sun. It has to be cloudy at least for me to go out on my walks or do really anything physical without just getting burnt to an absolute crisp. So, yeah, I guess the weather is all right here. But before we depress anyone else who is living in, a rain shower, I mean, I talked to too many people from Seattle too, where it's just like, oh my God, it is ridiculous. Why don't you just to get things started, give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and eventually become a bodybuilder?
well, I was always a little tomboy growing up as the youngest of two. My dad wanted a little boy, and he got a girl instead. So always trying to like impress your parents and make your parents happy. And I was a very active child, probably back. If it was nowadays, they'd probably say I had ADHD, just could never sit still. So
She could
the
probably
first,
tell from talking to me for about 5 minutes that yeah, I have a severe case of ADD as well. So I hear you on that.
yes. We lived in Florida. I grew up. I lived for about 10 years in Ocala, Florida. So I would say my first sport was swimming. I did the baby survival. Kind of threw you in the water. So I would say swimming was my first sport, and then got into baseball. And back then, let's see, I was born in '83. I'll give my age away. I don't care. But back then, we didn't have a girls um, like softball team until like I played 1 year with the boys baseball. So I'm always feeling like I'm trying to always keep up with the boys. I didn't want to be the fastest girl. I wanted to keep up with the fastest boys. Um, so I discovered track and cross country in middle school, and that was my passion. I ran the 200, the 400 meter. Um, Always so pale. My coach was always like, "We're gonna get you a tan one day." As much as a white blur running. Um, but I got the maybe not Norwegian, but I got all the Welsh in me, so I can't get tan myself. Um, So really, and I grew up riding horses. So that was another thing. My mom was very happy when I started driving because then she didn't have to take me to all the activities. Um, I met my husband right after high school. That's probably when I slowed down with the sports. It's like all of us tend to do after high school. I still rode horses. Um, and kind of put fitness on the back burner um, until probably right before I had my oldest son. Since I had the background of running, I was more of I'd call it a cardio queen. No offense. It was just, I was the girl you'd find on the elliptical, and I would do that and maybe some abs because, I wanted to stay lean. Um, and I always try to find the quick fixes after my pregnancy with both my boys, and realized I'd always try a year of being like, maybe I'll try this fat or I'll try that fat. And so frustrated that it wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't until after I had my youngest son because I knew he was going to be the last child. So I'm like, it's time to really kick this into gear. I still doing all cardio at the gym, but I discovered Spartan races. We were part of this. Um, it's called Sheepdog Impact Assistance in West North Carolina. We got involved with that. It's they help veterans and first responders because my husband's a Marine combat vet, and they would run Spartan races, trying to help veterans get through the courses, and well, not just veterans, but we'd have like law enforcement, EMS, firefighters, and so I got addicted to the obstacle course racing. I had the endurance, but realized I didn't have the upper body strength to get up and over the walls and monkey bars. And as competitive as I always been, it was very frustrating to me. I ended up running. I'd still run without a group and run solo at these other races, trying to get your trifecta, all three races. Um, I was hooked. Anything I try, um, I go like the deep end. It's just it's all or nothing. It's so I was in it. Loved them, obsessed over them. But I got tired of running into the wall and be like, "Hey, can you help a short girl out?" And like having a stranger like pick me up by my butt and just plop me over. So every time I'd come back from a race, I would decide to work on my upper body. Do started strength training. I discovered the bodybuilding.com is actually kind of where I discovered how to strength train and program a workout and, just be able to build muscle. It had that category of like, what are you trying to achieve? Weight loss, build muscle, blah, blah, blah. This is back when it was free. So you could click on it and just go with them for like 4 to 8 week programs. And as I'm doing these workouts and I'm getting stronger, no longer don't need anybody to help me get through these courses, which is like the most empowering thing. Like just being able to run and jump and climb these 8 foot walls. Um, Everyone was like, "Are you training for a bodybuilding show?" And I'm like, "No, no, no. I do obstacle course races. I'm not into that." Um, I switched gyms because my youngest son got old enough to kind of come with me to a gym that didn't have childcare. And at that time, I had gotten my certification, personal trainer certification. And so I was able to pick up clients at this other gym. And we had been to it off and on for years. It's after I had my youngest son, I needed a place that had the daycare. And when I came there, I started training people. I was only the only trainer there for a while. And then one of the older trainers came in, and she had been there before, but she came back. And she is a world champion bodybuilder. She competed in the late 70s, early 80s. We just make small talk back and forth. Come to find out, she coached cross country for one high school that was the competitor of my high school. She's like, "You look so familiar." And I'm like, "Well, you kind of look familiar too. You sound familiar as well." And she's like, "Were you happen to be one of the top runners on your team?" I said, "Well, yes. It was, one of the top three girls on our team." And she goes, "Oh no, I know who you are." And she goes, "I was the loud, pretty blonde running and or yelling at my athletes." And I was like, "Oh, I recall there being a very loud blonde on the sideline, just yelling and always, encouraging her runners to keep going." And she goes, "Yeah, that was me." So she helped me get into bodybuilding. I told her, someone they had mentioned, "Am I training for a bodybuilding show?" And she's like, "I think you would be completely ideal." She's like, "I'm going to train you." And she's like, "I think you'd be perfect for women's bodybuilding." Um, so that's really just the beginning of it. So I started women's bodybuilding and women's physique, and kind of struggled trying to find my place in the sport. I would do very well when there was, not many girls that would show up. I'm in the natural bodybuilding organizations. So we're not as big. You can only put on so much muscle mass. Because when you're cutting, well, you guys probably already know this. If you follow bodybuilding, when you're cutting, it's really hard. It's a balance between losing the body fat and muscle mass. So it's even harder. The substances you take would help you keep your muscle mass and lose the body fat. So naturally, when you do it naturally, um, we're all equally working just as hard, but it's even harder trying to keep that balance. So I'd always come in a little bit smaller. It's just how my frame is. And if I was competing back in the day, it'd be different. But nowadays, it's bigger the better. Um, and my coach, um, I think we both kind of outgrew each other, possibly. I don't think she had a lot of time to coach me. So for a while, I went without a coach. And I found my new coach in 2019. She was actually one of the judges, and you stay after the show to wait for your feedback. And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm at it. I am looking for a new coach, and I need some guidance." I did compete in women's physique and as a novice figure, just doing it on my own. And she's like, "I really think figure is your category, just how your body shape is, your frame." She's like, you'd be perfect for it. She's like, I think you're just a little too small. So I've been with her, Dorothy Tiller. She's very well known in the Atlanta area as Slaughter Cat, and so she became coaching me since 2020 was our first year. I met her in 2019 in November. So and this year's the first year I actually did my first NPC show, and we're just looking to grow and go in for bigger titles and not just kind of jumping around from show to show. So does that answer it? I don't know. That was probably like a roundabout way.
Oh, that was a
There's
yeah. That was a great answer. You kidding me? Well, first off,
okay.
for that whole story, first off, tell your husband that I said thank him for his service because that is, I mean, my history podcast I do about half the guests are military veterans, and I always say being 6'3", I feel like I'm 2 feet tall whenever I talk to one of those guys. So,
Yeah.
it's that is just ridiculous. But I mean, when you were getting started in bodybuilding too, there are so many myths and misconceptions about the sport of bodybuilding. And then when you add the female side of it on, I mean, that just gets amplified by about 10 times. Were there any myths or misconceptions that you were worried about, or was it one of those things where you just want to dive right in and see what happens?
I just want to dive in. I told her, I'm like, I saw, I didn't quite understand the difference between the natural and unnatural. I just told her, I'm like any girl that's really getting into like lifting, it was like, I don't want to get big and bulky. I knew what I could look like and the muscle I could put on when I was training for obstacle course races, but like the eating wasn't on point. I'd still be eating, I wouldn't know what I wanted to eat for dinner, and I'd still be sitting there eating like tater tots covered in like cheese and being like, I don't know why I'm still so, why I can't take some of this weight off. So I was still trying to learn the nutrition part and just eating right and what to eat when.
And this is also so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport. And I mean, people do not understand that because they'll see you if they haven't seen you for a while, just even friends and family, like, oh my God, Kelly, you look amazing. But they don't understand
Mhm.
that mental transformation that's taken place, which is so much more important than any of the physical changes.
Mhm.
What has this whole journey been like for you mentally?
Um it's kind of it's a struggle. So you'll prep, and I found sticking to prep was easy for me because when you're focused on something, and it's something you at least have an end goal. So there's a finish line versus when I'm training my clients, I'm like, if you slip up, that's fine. That's fine. You have the next day to start over, and it's just for the rest of your life. But for bodybuilding, when you're prepping, to me, I always thought in the back of my head, if I mess up one day, then there's one girl that's on point that she's gonna have me beat. So, and I always heard it put this way too: if you mess up one day, then it puts you 3 days behind. And so when you go on stage, you see yourself as the leanest. Like this is the best package, and every year you're like trying to improve your package. So every year you've brought your best package over and over and over again. So when you go back, because you can't stay in a calorie deficit, it's the hardest thing coming back and like seeing kind of your muscle definition go away. I'm a little bit even more insecure about it because I'm so pale. So I'm even looking in the mirror or the video right now, and I'm like, I don't, there's muscle there, but you can't see it. My last show was probably about a month ago, and my next show won't be until like November. So I got a little bit of a break and time to build. But that's the struggle. I think when you come off stage for me is the biggest. So loving your body in all the stages is the hardest. And I'm trying to be a little more graceful about it every year. If I have any of my clients that want to compete, I like to give them the whole story, like how it's going to be during, how it's going to be after. Um, it looks so glamorous, but when you're in the middle of it, it's not as glamorous as it looks. So,
Well, and that's why I always say if you are super pale and you look absolutely jacked and shredded, you're gonna win a show. That's why if they do it like before pre tanning, and I see someone who's like as pale as me and they're like super shredded, and you can see everything. You're like, okay, this is BS. They're gonna win this thing,
yeah,
so it's done
yeah,
anyways. But
yeah.
what were your friends and family's reaction like when you announced to them like, hey, I want to get bodybuilding a try?
Uh, I'd say my husband was most supportive, and I think it's helpful when you have a spouse or significant other that understands fitness. I think the people that don't understand fitness just want to question, well, why? Why are you doing it? Probably friends and family, like extended family, were the hardest. Where I know my mother-in-law didn't quite understand. I know after my first show, She gave me this a necklace or bracelet. I think it was a bracelet, and it was a cute little charm, and she had to explain it to me. It said she thought she could, and she what was that quote? It's one of those common quotes, but I can never. I'm horrible on quotes.
Yep.
Um, she thought something about achieving your goals, and she did it. Um, and she's like, well, you said you got into bodybuilding, but I didn't really believe that you would go through with it. My mom was worried about eating disorder because she would watch that body transform, especially that last month. Um, we've been working hard for 12 weeks, but that last month things start popping, and everyone starts noticing like, oh my god, you got small so fast, and I'm like, well, first off, it's not small. I got lean. And second off, it's not all of a sudden, yes, I am eating all the time. So it was just the concern for my health. And then I think it just was something that not everyone does. So it just didn't seem like that was a believable goal, or it just seemed like way out there. So,
I went to my first bodybuilding show this last weekend because I had a lot of guests that I've already had on, were already competing or just in there. And I will say that if you see a bodybuilder who is just about to step on stage, and normally they're wearing like baggy clothes either afterwards or before, they do
mhm.
not look like a bodybuilder when they have those baggy clothes on. You might be like, oh, is that
No.
someone? Have they? When's the last time they ate and stuff like that? So yeah, I can see where your mom would go
Oh,
with that. And
the
yeah,
the diet cheat.
the
Yeah,
skeleton
I
faces, I
say
like to call it. Yeah,
yes.
basically. Where I mean, so yeah, your mom, yeah, and that, believe it or not, that is one of the most common reactions that I hear when I ask that question. Is that like, yeah, the parents don't really think that they're gonna really go through with it, and then when they finally do, they're just like, oh wow, we're happy to see that you were actually like went through with it. But a lot of times they're like, oh, so you done with that now? Because like we don't want to see you get like that again. But then they just don't realize that like, hey, it is really just part of the sport, but just the mindset that you have to be a bodybuilder is completely different from really I think anything else in the general public. And I always say the one thing that differentiates bodybuilders from people in the general public is that everyone has those days where they wake up feeling like crap and they don't want to work out, or they just that you just don't feel like doing anything. But the thing that makes bodybuilders different from the general public is that the general public will find an excuse to be like, oh yeah, I don't want to go to the gym today, so I just won't.
Yeah.
But bodybuilders, they find a way to go into that gym. Where do you think that comes from for you, and how are you able to do that? Because that is one thing that I think is the most special part about bodybuilding, is just that dedication, that drive that you have to have if you want to be at least successful in this sport.
I think it's I don't think it's motivation. Motivation's very fleeting. I know you probably heard that before. It's part of our routine, part of our habit. Um, we feel good physically, we feel good mentally. Another reason why I got into fitness was for stress relief. Um, and I always say, if you're not wake up not feeling good, at least try to go to the gym, because you'll be surprised. You'll be in the middle of workout, and all of a sudden you'll be like, "What headache?" I feel amazing. And if you didn't feel good, then you really probably should go back to bed and get some rest. Like, listen to your body. Um, but for me, it's not about, well, growing on our off season. So, and it's just pushing through those bad days. But if you've already made it part of your routine, and I think the most bodybuilders, this is part of their daily routine. Um, I don't think we really take much any second thought to it. It's just like brushing our teeth.
Well, and when it comes to listening to your body, that's one thing that I think so many of the guests that I have on struggle with at first, is realizing to know like the difference between not just like pain and injury, like they say with sports, but just like knowing the difference between if you're when your body's had enough as opposed to just push it a little bit further. Was that something that you ever struggled with? Was sort of just finding that limit that everyone has, where it's like, okay, I know now that like it's not going to be worth it if I keep doing a workout today, or if I keep doing this? Or was that something that like some people just naturally have that, where they're able to identify like when it's going to be start to get painful for them?
I've gotten probably better at it in the last year, but I had a few like medical problems last year that kind of made me be like, you need to listen to your body. It's trying to tell you something. You need the extra rest. You need this. You need that. And so, not looking at it as taking the day off as you being lazy. It is like you're listening to your body. If you're sluggish, there is such thing as overtraining too. So, and my husband got me probably started probably over a year ago. I'd be like mid morning uh, workout, and I'd always struggle. I'm very task oriented. Um, So I always feel kind of frazzled trying to get my workout in and training people. And he suggested that I got up at 4 in the morning and at least be at the gym by 5. And, you know, I scoffed at him. I'm the one that gets up in the morning, run into walls. Like, don't talk to me. Like, don't even like mess with me. But I made it a part of my routine. And so I get most of my workout done. I would say most of the time I have all my workout done before my first client. And Um, so I make it a priority if I can. Since I work for myself, it's good, easy for me to make my own schedule. That midday I take a nap. Um, Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time, if I plan a nap, it doesn't happen. But if you make it, you know, if you like it happen naturally, and like I said, our body needs rest. It's not a negative. Like rest is not a negative term, and I think a lot of us see us, you're not successful if you don't go, 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 go. But at some point, when your body's telling you, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, you gotta stop and think, am I getting enough sleep? Am I drinking enough water? Am I fueling my body enough with food? Um, you know, uh, and of course, if it's none of that, maybe you need to seek your doctor. But you know, that's what happened to me last year. I was bad. Didn't do my annual exam. I hadn't seen my doctor since my youngest son was born, and he had just turned 9 last year. And apparently, I had a very large ovarian cyst. Last year, I had the most people ask me on my off season. It was my longest off season, probably about a year and a half off. And I had lots of people. I found my balance in my eating and all that in off season, like maintenance calories. So I didn't really put that much on, but I had lost count how many people asked if I was pregnant. It's very frustrating. I
Then you're
no
just like,
intention of starting
I
over.
swear to God, I'm competing, basically. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. They see you so lean. And like 2020 was one of those years where I was chasing after shows. You would like one would get canceled, and you're like, I'm already prepping. Well, let me go for that one. That would cancel. So it was the longest prep. I had gone from February all the way to September. Yeah. So everyone saw me for that full year of being so lean, and then all of a sudden, you go back to eating like maintenance calories, and not to mention, I didn't know I had a big ovarian cyst, and it was getting to the point where it could burst. So I had finally had surgery, and uh, so that's a good of listening to your body and going and seeing your doctor regularly too.
Being almost on prep from February to September, how did you deal with that? Because, like I said, I lasted about 4.5 weeks into a prep myself, and then I quit. So I can't imagine doing that for however long that is.
So I did kind of one extra show because I had like a more than a month gap between two of my shows. And I just told my coach, I'm like, I needed to do a show. I'm like, I know you can't come to it because it's kind of like a spur of a moment, but I just need a little bit of like a mental break, which was like doing the show and then having like your like after show meal and celebrating. But I would tell by the end of the year, by that December, even though I had stopped competing, my last show was in the middle of September. I had a mental breakdown. So it's funny how much that can affect you mentally. And I had all these little things that I hadn't addressed. So they just all spewed out the end of the year. Um, so I started doing um, some life therapy. So I really feel like that's been, I think this year's been the smoothest year. Even like my relationship at home, because that's a big one, not realizing that you're hangry, you know, and you're lashing out at
I'm
the
always
family.
thankful that I never had a parent compete in bodybuilding because I would just be in my room the whole time, then just be like, okay, wait until they're done competing, then you can come out of the room and,
Right.
ask them how you're doing. But one thing about this sport that I would have never guessed in a million years before I really got into it was that for so many of these guests, posing is the hardest thing for them, or it's one of them. I mean, when people think about this sport, most of them would probably say that, it's either the dieting or it's the working out that's the hardest thing. Most people don't understand that posing is so much more harder than it looks for a lot of people. What has your experience
Oh
been like
yeah.
with posing?
Posing is definitely my hardest. I struggled. I think another reason why I didn't place very well, I got some first places and second, but like in women's bodybuilding was I struggled with getting like pulling my lats out. Like I didn't quite understand the concept of it. It just seemed so simple, but the execution was so hard. Um, so once you could get kind of that down, how to pull your lats out, which is kind of what
I told her before my back is sore. Even thinking about pulling my lats out right now is just making it even worse, basically.
yeah, yeah. So it's just you got to practice, and I think the struggle for me is trying to find a place to practice. Um, I know you're going to be in front of a big crowd, and I've got a gym that's filled with a lot of we've got a wide variety uh, of people, from like old to young. That there's really not any space to practice posing because you're trying to concentrate, and when you get closer to show, it seems like more people want to stop and talk to you, and you want to talk back and let them know what educate them about it, but all of a sudden you're looking at the clock going, I really got to get home. The kids are home. The kids will be home from school. I've got this going on, that going on. I got grocery shopping, you know. Uh, so just putting in, I mean, shoot, I think Arnold practiced posing for what, 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Good
you
luck
got
doing that. Yeah.
right. Yeah, no. No, I mean, I keep saying, I'm like, I would just love to get myself my own little studio just so I can have like a little like
Oh,
runway
and
where I
plus,
can practice a lot.
if you practice posing for 2 hours a day, you wouldn't even need to work out. That would be enough of a workout as
No,
it is, really.
no, and it's a workout in itself, and that's what people don't realize. So, trying to learn how to hold the pose, especially when you get to good like NPC shows, or if you've got a lot of girls, even at the natural shows, you're gonna end up holding a pose, especially if it's a close class, for you know 2 minutes, shoot, maybe even 5 minutes. I haven't been in that kind of situation. I don't know. Things always seem like when you're doing mandatories, they always seem like they're longer than what they really are when you're on stage. And yet your T walk seems like it's over in a flash.
Well, and you mentioned being a tomboy as well. How hard was it for you to get adjusted to those high heels walking on that stage?
Oh, well, I used to love just being able to show up the show, and I'd be so I'd show up to shows and be the only bodybuilder there, and female bodybuilder, and I'm walking around without heels, and these other girls are like, "Oh, I'm so jealous," and such. I'm like, "Yeah, my feet don't hurt,"
Oh
but
yeah.
it was the adjustment. My coach had me walking on the treadmill with my heels on, so it's not just to kind of break in my shoes, get used to walking in them, and also kind of good for building your calves up. So, but once again, you get people coming up being like, "Well, what workout is that for?" So it's just practice with anything. Practice, 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 and sometimes finding the right heels. I did have the slip-on heels, and that may work for some people, but I got the ones with the ankle straps, and they a little bit of a platform, and they're a little bit more comfortable to walk in. So
She mentioned the unforgivable word calves on this podcast. Don't even mention it. I mean, that's the one body part for me where I couldn't. I mean, me and legs in general, I could inject pure muscle into my legs or calves, and they're not even going to grow. I'm the guy that could do 10,000 calf raises a day, and it's not gonna. Well, I totally forgot about that question too. So when you were getting started, what was one body part that really, really took off for you, and what was one body part that just dragged behind that you had to like train to oblivion?
back and shoulders were like, and it's very satisfying. Not good. Well, you can't really see your back, but you at least get to see like your posture. And shoulders are satisfying because you can kind of see them like in the mirror. Um, um, I wish you could see the back better.
Yeah.
That'd make some training stuff really easy. But for me, it was my legs. It's still my legs. Just trying to get the cut, the lines, and then when I'm cutting, it seems like I lose a lot of size in my legs. So um, I could definitely wish I could keep some size. I wish I could get them cut up easier. I feel like every year they're getting a little bit better. I think I shared today, I did like a throwback picture, and it was like my second year competing. And I'm looking at him, I'm doing an abdominal pose, and I have my legs out. And I'm like, oh, you can't, there's like a little bit of a line. It's kind of embarrassing, but it's kind of fun to see where you started at.
Yep. Absolutely. And when you're walking on that stage, what is that moment like for you going through, preps, which are not the most fun thing? And anyone that tells me that they are fun, I will drive you to the nearest insane asylum because, for the safety of the public. But what is that moment like for you when you finally get to show off all that hard work that you've worked so hard on?
Um, I love being on stage. Um, it's not really that I take in the crowd because you can barely actually see them from on stage, but um, the more shows I do, the more confident I feel on stage, the more comfortable I feel on stage, and like I said, you're proud of the work you put in. So if you did everything that you could, I think that's easier for you to hold your head up high and help you kind of strut, especially in women's figure. It's more like a pageant kind of walk. So you're kind of walking in and um, like presenting yourself. I guess it feels like you're presenting yourself a little bit better than like back when I did women's physique and bodybuilding. So
It's a little bit more proper posing, as I would say, where it's
yeah.
not just it's not all that other stuff. But now my favorite question to ask on this podcast: what is your go-to post-show meal?
Okay. So after all these years, I don't crave as much stuff as I used to. I used to be like, oh, I'm so craving this, I'm craving that. And then I have it, I'm never satisfied with it. But I'm saying the one I'm never disappointed in is a good veggie burger with fries. And if you could get like a fry onion ring combo, that's even better. And then I have to say that a lot of my shows are here lately have been in Atlanta. So my post show, everything is like 45 minutes away in Atlanta. So by the time I'm done eating, it's pretty well digested by the time I get downtown Atlanta. And I like to go to the Yard, which is a milkshake bar, and you get these big old freak shakes, and you got to try a different one uh, every time you go. So, and thank God it's not close to the house, or I'd be as big as a house.
So, what kind of like exotic flavors do they have? What are they talking about here? Because I'm starting to drool right now just thinking about milkshakes.
Let's see. Okay, the most basic one might be like a mint chocolate chip, and they have like a big old brownie and like whipped cream, and like you get to keep the little mason jar. It says the Yard. I had my last show was in June. They had like a gay pride
Rainbow
one, so I'm
flavored.
like, well, so I was like, oh, it actually wasn't rainbow flavor. This one had like a chocolate chip cookie ice cream, and it had like a piece of a white chocolate that was like pink with whipped cream on the top of it. What else did it have? And then it was all covered in like those rainbow colored
Oh yeah.
chocolate chip sprinkly little looking things. Um, no, they're all different. They're all so good though.
Whereas I'm the most plain Jane, where it's like, give me either a chocolate chip cookie dough or a vanilla or a chocolate. Really, that's all.
Yeah,
That's all
and
I really care about.
they do have the build your own, but
Oh,
that they have a picture of all the ones, and you're like, well, that one's so pretty, and well, like it matters, but they also have like a little quote, like as you're waiting in line. It's always a big long line. So take a picture of this is my tradition, post show tradition. I'm like, take a picture of the sign. It's always something like my milkshake brings all the boys to the Yard, and it was like during COVID, it was like that this year CDC says only 5 can come to the Yard. Uh, Something like that. That's the one that stuck with me. And then I'll take a picture of like my shake and I have to put it side by side. So that's my cheesy post show tradition.
well, and I mean, one thing that isn't talked about as much as it should be is the fact that like you're not going to have that stage look 24/7, 365 days out of the year. Unfortunately, I think a lot of
Oh
people,
no.
especially like when they saw you for like that whole like 6 to 7 month period of just like looking in your prep all the time. A lot of people when they see that, then they just assume, oh, they must look like that, all year round. But they don't realize that like your body is not meant to be in that stage lean for a significant
Yeah,
amount of time.
yes,
You're not
yeah,
at your
yeah.
healthiest. But what was that like for you when you first realized that like, hey, no matter how much hard work I put in this, like I'm gonna have to put on some weight after the show? And has it gotten easier for you to accept that as your career in the sport has gone on?
It was really, 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 really tough because like you're so proud of like how you look and you got used to people complimenting you, and then as a trainer you're like, am I sending the wrong signal out there? But it's gotten a little bit more graceful because I feel like with every prep you almost get better eating habits on your off season. I'm not saying you still stay stage lane. You can't. You could cause some metabolic damage if you're going to keep on the low calories, the calorie deficit, and you don't want that because then when you go to prep next, or just even if you decide not to show anymore, just trying to lose weight, period, is going to be hard. So I do feel like it gets easier as time goes on. Not saying I don't struggle with it. Um, I'm kind of at that where I start to feel a little bit more comfortable now, like about a month out. Um, but what messes with me, like with my head, like I said, I'm pale. I'm looking at the camera now. I'm like it's just it's pale, and uh, you know that you're going to benefit from having a good off season. So you want to come in, like I said, at every show with a better package. You want to take the judges' notes and improve upon it. So
Even as pale as you are, I can still see a lot of definition. So I will tell you
we're
that. So,
we're our own worst critics.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the funniest. I mean, so I normally bring it up as we get closer to the end here, but like it's perfect time now because you brought it up. I mean, body dysmorphia is one thing that a lot of people do not understand affects bodybuilders. I think more than anything really in the general
Mhm.
public, because I'm not gonna lie, I sometimes think it's hilarious because I have some of the most in shape people on the planet on this podcast, and then they'll message me saying like, "Do I look like I'm ready for the show?" And I say, "Look in a damn mirror, you idiot," basically. But how do you deal with that? Because like it is weird how some people do get into the sport just because they think that looking better they'll feel better about themselves, but they don't realize for a lot of them it gets even worse when it comes to the body dysmorphia.
Well, here's the thing. Another one of those reasons why I got into bodybuilding was I was trying to get a healthier relationship with food, and it it really doesn't help. I mean, it does because I know the proper way to eat, and I know that if you mess up, you know, like I'm not prep. I am prepping for a show in November, but I like I said, I gotta be eating more calories right now. To come in with a better package. And I don't want to go on a mental breakdown like I did in 2020. And so I'm at least in a mindset where I'm like, well, it's my kid's birthday. So I'm going to have a piece of cake. Or we're going to go to the forest. And when we come back, we're going to go stop. There's a little ice cream shop at the entrance. And it's like a fun little like memory you get to keep your kids. So, yeah, I'm going to stop and have that. But guess what? For dinner, I'm going to eat this. I'm going to eat that. Just because you had the one thing doesn't mean it's like, oh, F it all. And there goes the rest of my day. I'm gonna just eat like garbage. It just means that the next one you're gonna be on track, and it's not the end of the world because you had a cookie or cake or anything like that. So I do feel like it gets better. I'm still say it doesn't mean that the thoughts aren't there. But and this is something I warn like anybody that wants me to coach them. I try to give them a heads up about that. Like I said, like you may not think that you have this body dysmorphia or like even like be prone to like an eating disorder, but you may have those thoughts afterwards. I'm like, this is me being truthful and just heed a warning that you know, um it's definitely not what a nutritionist you do not go with a nutritionist with what we eat on a prep because they would look at you being like, this is very unhealthy. Um so
Yep.
yeah. So yeah, it is a struggle, and it's just how you come up, and that's my goal every year. I think every prep is to come back a little bit more graceful and being kinder to myself.
Well, and one thing that I appreciate a lot about you is that like you are natural, and I've let's be honest, the guests I've talked to, I'd say probably about 90% of them aren't. So whenever I get a natural
Yeah.
competitor on, I always am a little bit more happy about it because for me it's like I never bring it up because it's like it's none of my business, and you still got to put the work in no matter what you take. It's just that it
Oh no,
might be a
yeah.
little easier. But how
Yeah.
important is being natural to you, and how has it been a struggle at all, or has it been tempting at all to not be natural? Because I know it's easy to be natural until you step out on that stage and you realize that people who aren't natural have it a little bit easier than you when it comes to maintaining that size and just everything else that goes along with the sport.
Well, that's why I was so scared to do anything like an NPC show. I've been competing since 2017, and this year, I did the Gillen NPC show in Atlanta. It was amazing. And we struggle because, of course, we don't do it to lose. Everyone wants to win. Um, but it was a good experience to get to do that because I realized really not everyone. Um, you had some natural girls winning. It wasn't just like straight down the line you have to use. And I have respect for both. It's just for me, I know it's just something I don't want to do, and it's just kind of a boundary I put up because um, I know how many things can go wrong with it, and I
Especially as a woman, I got to put that in there as well. Yeah.
yes, yeah, There's that, and I feel like there's a sleeper. Sometimes I think you can not be doing it for, even a decade, and then all of a sudden, you hear people having heart attacks and this and
Yep.
that, and I'll be like, "Oh, they were so healthy and so fit." And I'm like, I feel like there's some damage that's been done that you can't fix it. And don't hate me. Anybody watching this, please don't hate me. I this is just what's for me and my choice is, and I want to be around for my kids.
Yeah.
Um, um, I want to have a long life after they move out. I want to be able to see my grandkids. I want to be an example for my clients and realizing if they really want it, I'm not saying they've got to compete, but that they can achieve these goals and not like I have to do this if I want to achieve these goals. But this way I could say this is the path you need to take, without, going the other way.
No one's gonna hate you because like I made my opinion known as well. It's like I would never do any of that myself, regardless.
Yeah.
And but like again, I don't judge people that do it because I know that it's like I'm. It's just I just wish it would be more widespread the knowledge from the general public just of how prevalent it is in this sport because a lot of people do not assume that like the people that they follow and they're like, oh, I want to look just like them. It's like, well, they are taking so much stuff that they have literally,
Yeah.
100 times the testosterone
Yeah.
that you have basically. So it's just,
Oh, and
yeah.
I follow so many girls that I got natural girls, I non-natural girls, and but the difference with me is I know which ones
Yeah.
you know are and which ones aren't, and that's
Well,
the
a
problem
good hint for
when
me
you
is
go
when they
online.
come. A good
Mhm.
hint for me is when they come on and they have a deeper voice than me. That's a pretty good indication for me, at least, where
Yes,
it's just like, yeah,
yes,
So, but
exactly.
that's
So
just, it's part of the territory. But I asked you this question before we got started. Being a mom, personal trainer, and being a bodybuilder, that's juggling those three things in life. Like I said, two of those three I would struggle very much and probably not be able to do. But how are you able to juggle all that stuff without going completely insane?
um,
Not saying that you aren't insane. I'm just saying without going completely.
I think what helps me is I think my profession being in the fitness industry, I think that helps with the balance with training and because it's not like, oh, well, I only have this small window and then I've got to go to the office and work. So I do feel like I have an advantage there. And I think that's why you get a lot of people that actually, um, not saying there's like not doctors and nurses and all that stuff that are competing, but I mean, you hear a lot, especially when you do bios at the shows, that a lot of them are personal trainers or coaches or whatever. And also having a spouse that really supports me and sees the parenting as a 50-50. Um, and I think if I didn't have that, I think that would be very hard. And well, nowadays, my kids are at this amazing age. I got a 14-year-old and I have a 10-year-old. So,
14 is
they,
not an amazing age. Wait until maybe about a year from now, and then you'll see how great that is.
oh, he's good. I mean, I get the little sparks of the teenage attitude, but he's he's a really
Enjoy
good
this
kid.
while it lasts. I'll just say that.
I will. I'm not going in blindly. I think he might be the easier of my two. If I'm going to foreshadow anything, but yeah, for the most part, especially the summer months, you know, they're able to kind of tend to themselves, and I don't leave pieces on a baby where you're uh, changing diapers and bottles, and so,
No,
yeah.
that does make a lot of sense. And I mean, let's be completely honest. You're not the average looking woman, like you said. You get a lot more attention, especially as you're lean down. And I compare it myself to being like a mini celebrity, where it's just you are going to draw more people's attention. Is it still weird for you when you get that attention in public, or is it one of those things where you've gotten more used to it as you've gone on in this sport, where it's not that you're used to it, but it's just like you're more accepting of the fact that like I am going to draw more people's attention?
I think I've gotten used to it. I mean, I've always um I don't know. I think I don't like to blend in, so it's maybe like helpful. But I always feel like I always have to have something that stands out about me. I don't think that there's ego to that. It's just I want to just be myself, and just because society says they expect you to be one way, I'm pretty stubborn. I'm not going to be that way, and I'm definitely not your typical mom with my. I ask my kids if I embarrass them, and so far I get a no all the way. I'm like, you could be honest with me, because I'm showing up, picking them up from friends' houses or school, and I'm still in my workout clothes. I mean, I got this one shoulder on today. because it makes me feel good, and you don't see the other moms dressing like that, but you know,
Yeah. No, it's
yeah.
it just it's one of those things where I think it's hard at first, but yeah, as you do get more used to it, I think it just becomes a tad bit easier. But this is a question that I think about every single time I have a health and fitness guest on, and it's just human nature for me. Why do they do this to themselves? Why do they put themselves through this? I hear all these prep brain stories. I hear everything like that, and just the human in me back of my head is like, why do they do this? And I know why because I've talked to so many of them. But it's just like you just still think that. But what is your why? Like, I bet you still hear that either from friends or sometimes family or just people in general when they just come up to you and just go, Kelly, why do you put yourself through this? What is your why that you like to respond to that with?
Ooh, that's always a weighted question. Like I said, I'm very competitive, and like I said, when I jump in all the way. I think my husband's afraid. I'm like, I've had people wanting me to do like powerlifting. You're uh, my husband's like, no, those are pretty muscles. Those aren't. And he's like, and Kelly, I don't want you to do that because then I know how you are. You're going to try the one thing and then you're going to be hooked. I think I like to see how far I can push myself, and it's kind of fascinating to see how your body can transform um, from season to season, and the body is just an amazing thing. And of course, for my clients, just showing like if you put your mind to it, you can achieve some amazing things. So, well, not just my clients, of course, my kids. It, they don't get to see all the work I put in because they don't have to come to the gym with me now. Not like a little toddler tagging along, but that you don't just show up and receive an award. Like you work really hard for it, and it does pay off.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, and that's what one thing that I love about the sport is that like you can't fake that look, that bodybuilding look, and you have to work so hard to achieve it. And you have to, so
Hmm.
it just shows that hard work and dedication. Whereas a lot of things other in life, you can just fake it and pretend that like you really worked hard for it. But like you can't fake a bodybuilding look. No matter what you're on, no matter what you do, you still have to put in the work.
No,
So that's the one thing
no.
that I appreciate about it the most. But the last two questions before we wrap things up here: if
Hmm.
someone were to walk up to you and say, Kelly, we made a decision. You can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it. What would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
I kind of wish it could go back, and I don't know if it ever really was. I wish it could be more natural, and I know that might be just my bias, but
Oh, I think that
you
too.
know,
Yeah.
because every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and like really every year the categories change because whoever was first that year, you're trying to achieve that goal, so you're trying to improve and improve and improve, and at some point you can only get so big. And definitely in the natural world, you can only get so big naturally. So, yeah.
I think also that like there needs to be more attention paid to the natural shows and the natural federations because
Oh, I do too.
they work just as hard and most people aren't. I mean, most people I talk to aren't even aware, or not that I talk to, that I know that are friends. They know everything about bodybuilding just from just general knowledge, but they don't know about the natural shows and the natural
Oh,
competitors.
yeah.
So I do think there needs to be little bit more knowledge when it comes to that as well. And I'd love to have you on in a year just to give us an update on what you've been up to. Where would you like to be at in your
Oh,
bodybuilding?
definitely.
Where would you like to be at in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved when we have you on a year from today?
Well, I'm actually going to be promoting a show for next year. Southern Muscle Association is one I've been competing with for a few years. Um, he's been having them mainly in Atlanta, so we're going to bring him up to North Carolina, and so we'll be having one in April. I would really like to get into some judging because I think it's the most fun. Like I don't just get off stage and then leave and get my meal. I like to sit back and watch, and it's fun. But I have a little bit of like 4-H background where you're like did the horse conformation. So I think that's why I like it because you're like, this is the ideal for this, and this is the ideal for that. So I place you, you know, first, second, third, whatever. Um, we would really like to open our own gym as well. Um, and we want it to be more of a bodybuilding gym, kind of like an old school feel, but with a new school vibe. That way I could have a posing room and I could bring my clients in and I'd have the space to I would like just have a door to shut it. And if I want to lock it and practice my posing, with no interruptions. Cause once you get home, it's so hard. I think, especially as a mom, um, to just come home and do practice posing, and I'm just not one to actually walk around in my posing suit around my kids. I'm just I have 2 boys. It's just
You don't want to scar them at that age. Yeah. Yeah.
no, and you never know what's gonna be the thing that scars your kids. So if I can control that one,
Yep.
um, so those the 3 goals I have. I'm gonna be promoting a show in April. I hope it goes well. I hope I could get some people local. I hope I could get some people from Georgia and all over the place. Um, and then I'd love to start learning the judging process. And it'd be great to open my own gym, especially in our area is growing. We have a lot of people moving out here, so gyms are getting crowded. So I would love to open one that's kind of maybe on the other side of town where there's a need. So yeah.
No, yeah, judging has always been a fascinating thing for me where I've had a couple of judges on too, and it is very interesting to hear, their side of things and how they judge and do all that stuff. So it's yeah, I would love to get into that myself if I could, but there's I'm not for my thing if you've never competed, you should never be a judge in the first place. So that's
Oh
just
no,
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, but
it
yeah,
yeah.
I'm never going to I mean, yeah, I will never yeah, so
That's like having hiring a bodybuilding coach that's never actually competed. You know, I I'll say it. I don't know how many are out there, but I'm just saying.
or like having women referees in the NFL, I'll just say that. But
Well,
don't get me
yeah,
started on that.
yeah.
So, but
No,
anyway,
I won't.
anyway, before we wrap things up, why don't you do you have anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Like shout out to my family. They're always very supportive of me. My husband is Chris. I got my oldest Cullen and my youngest Rylan. I got to give a shout out to my old bodybuilding coach. She's still a good friend of mine. I still see her every week at the gym. Jennifer Bird, my suit maker, Tracy Edwards. She's amazing. I think I tagged her in my post if y'all want to look at her. She's got some. She does amazing stuff with suits. And then of course my coach Dorothy Tiller, Slaughter Cat. She kicks my butt every week and teaches me so much, and she's super patient with me. So I appreciate everybody. I don't think I could be where I'm at now. And I have some big goals, and I got some growing to do. But I'm ready for the challenge. I'm gonna do this as long as I can. So and if I get tired of doing it, I get tired of doing it. But I'm just gonna see how far and how long I could push it.
So, when I do have you on here from now, what is one area of your body that you hope is the most improved on?
My legs, I just want to get them to cut up. Come on, I talk to them daily. I'm like, you know, um, yeah,
Just please,
yeah,
yeah, just please, just
please,
grow, please. I
just
mean,
please.
yeah,
I don't want some chicken legs. I want them nice and cut up.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, again, everyone, go and give Kelly a follow. I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below, and buyer beware. You will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies. But again, Kelly, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It was nice talking with you.
I appreciate that. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.